Okay then guys, so far then we've removed the components we said we were going to do. Remove and replace front bumper cover, near side front wing, near side front door and bonnet. Now it's time to start popping things back together again. So you can see I've got the door ready, it's propped up there nice and safe, all those pads there to make sure we don't scratch anything on a customer's car. And let's get this in position. So if you remember, I showed you how to hold a door on your own, on your knee. It's better obviously if you've got somebody to give you a hand, but I haven't, so I'll show you that technique again. And you'll also notice hopefully that the hinges, make sure they're in the right place, make life as easy as you can. The nuts I've got set out in the right place, all the bits of equipment I think I'm going to need, even down to is my ratchet clockwise, in other words turning it on, and yes it is, spanners there as well. So I'll gently try and lift this into position. That's what I think I'll probably do whilst I'm setting myself up. Pop that mat there. Careful, don't clash and crash into anything. Two mats in position so that door's still not being damaged. And if you remember this little technique where I said we're going to rest it on our knee so we can pivot and swivel and pop it in the position that we want. And again, that check strap half set back so it's not going to get in our way. We come. Not sure how much of this you can see, and I'm going to try this bolt for there. So studs are lined up, that one nut wound on hand tight. I can feel there's quite a few threads on there, and if you remember, once it's on with the bolt at the top, it should hold itself. I'm just going to turn this little hand lamp here I've got set up, and hopefully that should help us see a little bit more what's going on. So that nut in there is holding the door nicely, gravity's doing its thing. I'll just pop that up on there, a little bit of extra light for us. So now all that's left to do, try and get a nut on the bottom. Again, if you can do it by hand to start with, that way you know you're not damaging any of those threads. We call it cross threading. And if you notice, then sometimes I back it off, feel it step down if you like, so I know it's going on nice and central. I'm being quite lucky here. Typically you don't get the bolts or nuts turning quite that easy. Ratchet, as I say, is already set to on. Make sure I don't bash and crash and bump into things, cause any unnecessary damage to any of the paintwork. I'll just gently, what we call, nip this up. I can feel the door starting to close as it lines up with the hinges. Bit more on the bottom as well. Manually twist that round. Oops. Pop that wiring harness out the way so you can see a little bit better. Same again. You see with this check strap just sat back. So we do that when we remove the door. It just gives you that little bit more room to manoeuvre. Makes your life a little bit easier. So hopefully you can take away from this that if you plan, think ahead. You only need to do this a few times before it becomes second nature. This planning and thinking ahead, it makes these jobs so much easier. Right, quite fortunate this time round that the wing's out of the way, so I can actually just tuck that wiring harness through there, gently making sure I don't pinch anything, and we can deal with that from the other side. It's actually going to make life a little bit easier. So for now you're thinking, right, how on earth do we get this check strap bolt in there? I mean, we could you could struggle with a little bit of gap like that. Sometimes it won't let you. Or little screwdriver, brace it, and when you pull the door, you'll hear that click back. So now it's back in its position. I don't know if that happened a bit quick, if that picked up on the camera, but I hope so. And again, I like to go finger tight with everything first. Remember that little release button on the ratchet? And we'll just nip that up. Okay. And then we'll see how this door shuts. Now we're going to be aiming for the lock mechanism and the striker plate to catch one another. If this was a new door, I would definitely take this off. In fact, it looks like that's a really good find actually. I'm glad I checked that. Somebody's been here before and left that half undone. That's not the right screwdriver, so I'll go get a driver to fit that and take that off and do it the way I was going to. Okay, so we're back here again. I've got the right size screwdriver bit that I need. I'm going to use it on a ratchet because we're going to need quite a bit of turning force. Again, nice and gently, and again, me being me, I like to remember that this was the business end. You can hopefully see some evidence marks on there where it's been striking. I'll keep that pointing in the direction that I want, and I can try this door, just making sure that everything's where it should be. I'm going to pop my head around and make sure that the wire is not going to catch. No, that's nice and clear, and then we'll just gently close this door. Hopefully what we should have when we get down to eye level is approximately the same height, nice even gaps. If anything, it looks a touch high, I mean just a fraction. Some might say that that's for reducing wind noise, and when we push it in it does actually close quite nicely, so I'll probably leave that be. Right, whilst we're here, I'll move these pads out the way. If you didn't have kneeling mats in your trousers, then they're a brilliant idea for yourself as well as the car, and we can see nice clear line of sight. Widest one first, the next one there. Actually, a little bit of a scratch mark on there. I'd quite like to do a little bit of something with that, even if it's not technically the right colour. A little coating of something just to help it out from a corrosion point of view. Whilst we're letting that dry off a little bit, we will fit this striker plate. Now, actually, whilst we're here, if you look in there, there's a captive nut that should manoeuvre. That's quite stiff, whether that's corrosion or on this model if it's just set that way, I'm not sure, but normally those captive nuts will move a little bit more than that. I'll just check the evidence marks, and I'm just going to go hand tight, and again if we try and look and check the movement, I want to keep that fairly neutral. Make sure that it can move a little bit if it wants. And this is a really simple trick. Make sure that the lock can't actually lock. Gently push that, and if nothing else, that should help set your height. So it shouldn't be too far away at that. I'll just gently pinch that. Gently pinch that. Not a fan of over tightening. And again, just make sure that handle's held open. I can't feel that pulling anywhere. There we are, nicely closed. And again, for being ridiculously fussy, I'd say that's a fraction too high, maybe even quarter or half a millimetre. But we'll compare the other side and see if that's an acceptable gap or not. And we always want a little step, ever such a tiny step this way. And the reason being is the air's flowing over a car as you're driving. if this was to sit proud, you'd get whistling noises and wind noises. So we always just set these a fraction higher, the leading edge if you like a fraction higher than the trailing edge. That would be the same with the wing, and it should be the same on the back door. This is the other way around, so maybe whoever's had this before maybe needs to rethink about that. In fact, that looks like it's full of filler, and somebody shaped that and probably got it standing a bit proud. Could have spent a bit more time. Not our problem at the minute. Let's continue with this. I'm happy with that. I will just make sure that's nice and tight, not over tightening. Remember what I said? Quarter drive socket sets seem to suit my heavy handedness. A lot of people prefer a 3/8, but I used to snap a lot of bolts as an apprentice, so I learned the hard way. Right, happy with that. Back here, that's tacked off and dried nicely. We could spray a bit of wax oil on there if need be. If we were really being a perfectionist, we could mix a little bit of 2-pack paint. But on a demo car of this age, I think a little bit of aerosol spray paint is going to be enough. Okay, now all I need to do is reconnect the wires, tighten the hinge bolts or hinge nuts in this case. Give you a bit of light there so you can see, but I'll do that now so I don't forget. And nice steady turn. Don't need to swing off that. I don't need to risk snapping anything. I'll point out, on a modern vehicle you will probably find there'll be a methods manual from Thatcham, or maybe the manufacturer themselves, and they will have torque settings for everything critical. A car this sort of age, you're not really going to have that. We're just going to rely on a technician's feel and experience. But most things now will have a torque value that you work to. I'm going old school, and that's tight enough. I'm not going to strip anything or damage anything, and I know it's tight, it's not coming off. Right, so I need to fish around in here, try and get the bigger one done first. What I might actually have to do is pull that through again. That's it, just to give us a little bit more room to play with, because we are quite restricted. Yep. I'm saying yep, am I the right way up? There we are. Nice reassuring click. There again. Nice reassuring click. Now we can gently tuck those back where they came from. I'm always cautious of any edges, any panel edges being sharp and damaging anything. And again, we'll pop back through here. There we are. Excuse me, and just reseat that rubber seal. There we are. Obviously, if that's not seated properly and you wing on there, you can't see if there's any moisture getting in and creating a water leak, so it's nice to be doubly sure now. Alright guys, that should be just about it. Once we get this back in place, that clip there needs straightening a little. It's been bent over by somebody. There we go. That one's already in place, and that was vanishing beforehand. Typical. There we go. Excellent. Leave my tools there for now and just have a quick check. Happy. Obviously this needs some attention at some point. For now, I'm happy with that gap. And another reason I asked you to leave the doors and windows unlocked, I can reach in and check that the internal mechanism works just as effectively. It just saves you running in and out all the time. Okay guys, hope that was useful.